It's all new data. Now, this is the beginning of a project in which I try to condense or compress a thought pattern that has been observed by me over maybe weeks, months, years, and I try to condense this into a quote, and then I try to explain this quote. This quote now is "It's all new data," which also partially is kind of backlinking to the concept I just explained, which is that it's all new data. In order to now have this data available, I need to also document this data. So the purpose also of these videos is to document data for my future self. And I found that it is just higher output per minute of time, or per unit of time rather, to record video often, even though the backplay of this video is kind of harder because I need to play back files on my notebook or access social media sites on which I post these videos. But then I am potentially exposing my mind to the algorithms, and this currently seems to be not a very useful idea. So basically the access is kind of blocked, which kind of turns this into somewhat of a paradox for me, because then if I record this data, then, well, I cannot really access the data. So what I'm mostly relying on is notes. I do use OneNote, and I now also in the last couple of years started to to include pictures. I am taking pictures on my phone, and I'm also taking screenshots on my phone, and I'm also taking very often screenshots on my notebook. Even though the snipping tool currently on Windows usually takes 15 seconds to load. It's all new data is an idea that I derived slightly from basically the extension of the capability of large language models. If large language models are just now very rudimentary, and also just to my understanding, are just trained on data and then they observe patterns. What is so different from the brain? Now, of course, large language models to a certain extent are kind of modeled on the brain, and there is this backlinking and this comparison and multiple analogies. Now, if I want to find out something, I actually often just need data. In order to find out whether a sleep schedule works, whether a certain workout works, whether a certain thing I am doing actually works, I just need to actually do the thing. Because if I don't do the thing, and now doing the thing, just do the thing, it's so obvious. Doing the thing is just, to a certain extent, I think, a truism. It's also to a certain extent a dominance statement, I think, because doing the thing, or at least saying that someone should do the thing, is giving the person who says that the person should do the thing some authority, because the person says just a truism. And so if I say to you, or if you explain a problem to me and I just say to you, just do the thing, then it just makes no sense. And it's also maybe slightly manipulative, one could say. Now, data is new information. Of course, there are different definitions now. It also might depend on the particular subject of science one is in. I actually sometimes study, at least I attempt to, and so there were these different definitions of what is data, what is information, and so on and so forth. So there were these different hierarchies. But let's just say, okay, information, if it is stored somewhere, is kind of data. So if I have information and it then is stored on my brain, but I also can record information and then have notes and notes and notes, then I can access these at some point in the future, and therefore also expand my capabilities of the otherwise constantly overwriting working memory and maybe not storing something in long-term memory brain. So I can basically extend the rationality, at least in my eyes, and basically extend the functionality of my brain to a certain extent with recording notes. I also then have more working memory. Now, one could say, okay, the brain is just infinitely capable and something like this, but what is also true is, I think, is that I am not as capable as 100 thinking versions of me. So if I am not as capable as 100 versions of me at the same time, then I am probably less capable. If I am less capable, then there's probably a constraint on what I can do. If there is a constraint on what I can do, then I probably could use help doing the things that I need to do, or that someone else told me to do. So, if I now have a certain idea, the easiest way now to probably put this into practice is to do already the steps. Because as one does the steps, so there are a couple of assumptions now baked in. The couple of assumptions are that often one cannot predict what reality is actually doing. So I have a limited brain. I also have limited storage. I also have a limited computational capacity. If I have all these things, or in new LLM speak, it would be called compute, I think. At least I heard some people like Sam Altman talk about computational power as just short compute. So if I now just say I have limited compute and maybe also limited other thing, of course now one could define different categories. One could just say it's all compute. One could just say it's software and it's hardware and so on and so forth. I am limited. If I am limited, then my brain also has a limited understanding of reality. If my brain would be able to simulate the whole universe, then I would be very capable. But probably I am not. So in order to now predict something, I can only rely on the information I already have. If I therefore now explore something new, or I want to explore a new idea, then I I need new data, because the model of reality I have in my head probably does not allow me to predict so much into the future. So in order to now find something out, I therefore need to do already the steps. So doing already the steps is therefore often seemingly the best thing. And I now this has now kind of changed a couple of things in the last couple of weeks, and also how I approach things to a certain extent. Instead, for example, let's take a very basic example, at least for me. If I instead of planning out a video, for example, I often wrote essays like these. If instead of writing this, and this would take longer compared to doing already the video in a non-scripted form, then I already have a first prototype. Now, in the same time it takes me to write, I can already do kind of the second version of the video that might be slightly better. I then, in the same time would take me to write this, I could already do the third version and maybe a fourth version already. So I therefore have now 3 prototypes, and maybe the fourth is the final product. And the same is true for so many other things. If I want to try out a new workout plan, the best idea is to try out the new workout plan and then already exploring it. And even if I don't try it fully, I can still do already the steps that lead towards this. If I want in 5 years to be at a certain event, then why not already put the event into the calendar? Basically taking already the different steps, maybe researching already the location for a hotel. I had this idea, for example, to have a given event at some point in the future, and I just looked already the hotel up. So basically instead of spending time thinking about the idea in my head, I went out more into practice. Of course, now this is again very simplified. And this is also that this language is often also used to just say, okay, I just did already the thing, and doing already the steps that I would need to do if there was like high time pressure right now, and I now would need to do this. Let's say, okay, I want to do something, and I now only have 10 minutes to do this. What would I do right now? To answer this question, I now actually need to face the dragon, as Jordan Peterson would say. I need to actually face what I would need to do. And this then uncovers kind of new things about this particular problem, which I would have needed to face anyway. Of course, the situation could still change, but I now am already also in action, which then again already generates additional dopamine, which I otherwise would not have if I just made up a plan and then basically tried to make the plan better and better by basically sculpturing out the plan without getting new data.